now. He made his much-hyped return from a finger injury Sunday at Lambeau, but Mr. Unlimited looked like Mr. Limited. You know what I mean? Catch my drift. He was shut out by the Packers. He was held scoreless for the first time in his starting career. He was left with a 3-6 Seahawks record heading into Week 11. The lousy start coming on the heels of an offseason in which Russ expressed his frustrations with the franchise. So what comes next? Peter King wrote this: I wonder if we're seeing the end of the Russell Wilson era in Seattle. As I watched the futility of this game, I just started thinking it might be time for the Seahawks to think of alternatives to Wilson, particularly if he gets mopey again next offseason. Nick, you think Sunday's loss was just a bad game, or do you think possibly it might be the beginning of the end for Russell Wilson up in Seattle?
Oh, yeah, I think it might be the middle of the end. I think the beginning was probably this offseason, and this year has not, healed any of those wounds. So, yeah, I think this is a real thing that now becomes one of the leading simmering stories for once the season ends, because Russ was unhappy when they were 12-4 going to the playoffs. How's he going to feel at 3-6 on the outside looking in? And by the way, sidebar, Russ should never have been allowed to play. I understand he's very powerful within the organization.
19 hours of rehab.
He couldn't take snaps under center. I don't care how much rehab he was doing. He was either his hand wasn't right, or because of all the rehab, he was sleep deprived. Either way, he was not in a position to play football against the Green Bay Packers. And Geno had played well enough that you would have had a better chance. You wouldn't have scored negative points. And this was a 3-0 game late in the game. I know it ended up being a blowout, but with just competent offense, because Rodgers looked rusty having missed all the practice time, Seattle could have won that game. But here's the thing, Wilds. Typically one would say, well, you can't move on from your quarterback as good as Russell Wilson. But has it grown stale? Since, will you believe this? Because Seahawks are in the playoffs seemingly every year. Since they were last in the Super Bowl, Seattle has won 3 playoff games. Those 3 playoff games were all wild card weekend games. They haven't been past the divisional round. And those 3 playoff games came against Teddy Bridgewater in a 10-9 game Seattle should have lost, but Blair Walsh, if you remember, missed a 27-yard field goal that I think took 6 years off poor Mike Zimmer's life. Their next playoff victory came against the Detroit Lions. Doesn't count. It's against the Lions. And their only other playoff victory came against, let me check real quick, Josh McCown. A 17-9 victory over Josh McCown. That was the game Carson Wentz got knocked out of on the first drive. So since being in the Super Bowl, you have gone to the playoffs 5 times. Been bounced in the first round, 2 of those 5. And the 3 times you got past the wild card weekend, it was against Bridgewater in a game you should have lost, against the Lions, and against Josh McCown, and then you lost the next week. So maybe it's better for both sides. Maybe Seattle needs a hard reset, and maybe Russ can, continue this part of his career somewhere else, because I don't look at Seattle as contenders. I don't. They weren't last year. They're not this year. So I think maybe it's better for everybody.
Okay, so Broussard, here's my issue, or see what I see. I don't think Russ ever wanted to leave last year. And Brandon was on the show, and Brandon was dialed into this story. But Russ never actually said, I want it out. Granted, his agent put out a report like, if I were to leave, these are the 4 teams I'd like to be traded to. But Russ never came out and said, I want out of Seattle. Now, why didn't he? Well, it's a pretty simple answer. He doesn't want to leave, but he wants things to change. So how could that work? Same with Tom Brady. Similar story to Tom Brady. Tom Brady wanted things to change. But Robert Kraft's like, well, Bill Belichick's not going anywhere. Bill Belichick's like, I run this whole show, so you're going to be the one that leaves. I don't think Pete Carroll is as ingrained in Seattle as Bill Belichick is. I think the knives are being sharpened in the media, and Russ, whether he wants to admit it or not, has lit a little bit of a brush fire that if Seattle struggles this year and he gets mopey, as Peter King says it, I think the media and fans are going to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. If we have to make a decision between one of the best quarterbacks in the league and our coach, who hasn't won a Super Bowl since, I think 2015, was it?
2013.
I think
2013.
I think 2013. I think everyone is going to side with Russ.
Blew one.
And Pete Carroll will be on the hot seat, not Russ.
A good take, Wilds, as they should. I mean, look, what was Pete Carroll in the NFL? I know what he was in college. What was he in the NFL before Russell Wilson got there? A mediocre coach who'd gone 7-9 in each of his first 2 seasons in Seattle. That's what he was, and Russell Wilson made him darn near a legend. All right, and Nick, here's the thing. Has it gotten stale with Russ? No. You know what was stale? Matt Hasselbeck was stale. David Krieg was stale. Jim Zorn is as decent as he was. Seneca Wallace was stale. Franchises, this is what you live for. To get a star, future Hall of Fame quarterback that every single year has you in the playoffs or right there in the hunt. You cannot get rid of it. They went their first 36 years of existence without this type of quarterback, and there is no guarantee they would ever get anybody 3/4 as good as Russell Wilson. So, yeah, I'm not moving on. If I got to get rid of Pete Carroll, so be it. If Russ does, and maybe Wilds is right that he really doesn't want to leave, if he does just really get ugly in the offseason, that's one thing, okay, we got to look at. But he is locked up for the next 2 years after this as well on his contract. So I'm just not under any circumstances trying to trade Russell Wilson if I'm Seattle, Nick.
And you make really strong points. I guess the devil's advocate argument is you don't have your first-round pick this year. It's not like you have oodles and oodles of cap space. How are you going to get much better unless you do want to call up the Giants and say, we want 3 firsts and 3 seconds and throw in Daniel Jones, we'll see if he works here, for Russell Wilson, and do a hard reset of the franchise. Wilds, on the Pete Carroll thing, I want to be delicate with how I say this. Pete Carroll turned 70 years old a couple months ago. We all thought it was kind of cute, the whole, where's my challenge flag? Oh, let me throw my flip phone. I do wonder how that landed in the locker room and in the front office. It's like, oh, okay. Guy's like literally searching his pockets for his challenge flag. I mean, we're 3-6. We don't look, we're not great on defense anymore. Our coach is, like, wait, where did I leave my keys during the game?
I think that's
and I do wonder. I mean, it's just what happened. Wilds, I've been watching football a long time. Never seen someone reach for the challenge flag and throw a phone. Never seen it. Now, I don't know if that was a phone or a weird hairbrush or what it was. It was a hand warmer. Whatever it was, it wasn't a challenge flag. And I just don't think that necessarily, we looked at it as funny. I just wonder if the knives are out, I guess I'm helping sharpen them with that little, anecdote, if you would, Jenna.
I won't go that far. Although I did cover Marv Levy forever, so that's why I won't. But back talking the